In chapter 502, we are first shown what truly went down the night of Naruto's birth 16 years ago. Minato, the 4th Hokage's death match, as the chapter title calls it. Minato is forced to battle the strongest Uchiha since Madara himself and the strongest enemy in the world without a doubt. This is a consistent idea. Each Hokage dies to the strongest of their era. Hashirama metaphorically dies to Madara Uchiha, or at least doesn't fight after that. Tobirama dies to the legendary Gold and Silver brothers. Hiruzen dies to Orochimaru, who is stated by the fanbook to be the most powerful and evil of all village enemies. And then Minato died to Obito, who inhaled as in that night, it was called, quote, the longest day in shinobi history, implying potentially the most arduous bout there was. So there is a theme of every Hokage dying to the strongest foe, for the narrative of the Hokage being the strongest of the 5 principal leaders. So since everybody is doing, each Hokage versus Minato's fight against Obito, what if Minato fought every other Hokage's death match in their place? So since we are covering only the first 3 Hokage and Kakashi, I suppose we can kind of just begin with a section of how formidable Minato, the 4th Hokage, truly is. Now, I do have many videos on Minato's ridiculous speed, or just his caliber of shinobi, I guess, but for here, we know that Minato stands atop the world, being comparable to the 4 Hokage in the war arc prior to them arriving at the battlefield, with the chapter synopsis calling them the biggest of the big fish. This obviously meaning that Minato is very much comparable to the other Hokage, and likely just not inferior to ones like Tobirama or Hiruzen. Minato during the war arc also outspeeds every Hokage to the battlefield using his body flicker, which each of them actually are moving at their top speeds, as that's what body flicker is. However, Minato is actually able to not only reach it before all of them, he reaches the mainland and then teleports it away, has a full conversation with Naruto, and then the bomb actually activates and teleports away. This meaning that Minato, with just raw movement speed, totally blitzed his own flying Raijin. This is obviously done through Minato actually opening up a subspace to enter in, as we know that in the back of the 3rd data book, there's a dictionary section that describes the teleportation jutsu as a technique that allows you to move into a subspace and appear elsewhere. The idea of this technique having a speed equation rather than just being instantaneous is very consistent with every single time Minato mentions it in his fight with Obito. He says transport instead of teleport, whereas people like Hiruzen just say teleport, showing just a general lack of knowledge outside of those who genuinely use this technique. The 2nd data book says it's high speed movement across space and time, and it's a speed technique not even comparable to body flicker, which all just of course that this actually has a speed equation. Even the flying thunder god Guardian Thunder is described in the data book to simply transfer the Bijou bomb to a separate location, and there's a lot more to this concept, such as the Einstein-Rosen bridge or the wormhole theory, deeply connecting all this. So if you really are curious on this speed equation or the wormhole theory, then please check out my Minato versus Tobirama video, which will be in the description. But for that conversation, all I'll say here is just that Minato's 4th data book page says that he handles the jutsu to perfection. This obviously means that if Minato handles a speed-based jutsu to perfection, then he should inherently be faster than Tobirama, as well as he can go to point A to point B faster than Tobirama can. This doesn't really change for Hiruzen either, as he, with Anko implying that Minato would still be more than capable to take down Orochimaru with 13 extra years of training and combat experience. This being an Orochimaru whose talent and knack for ninjutsu is so great that not even all of Hiruzen's knowledge is a match for it. This is pretty consistent, as Hiruzen's main talking point is always just how he's above the 5 Kage, and this is just directly pertaining to him, as well as the fanbook also states that it's just the Hokage tier that's above the 5 Kage, and Minato is obviously of that caliber with him being Hokage, and the chapter 238 synopsis statement actually saying that Minato has unrivaled strength, even both Jiraiya and Tsunade stating that he was unparalleled as a shinobi, and everybody pales in comparison to Lord Fourth, which is pretty consistent with how in the 3rd data book, Naruto is stated to be the only shinobi capable of surpassing Minato, which this would just mean characters like Itachi, Pain, Raikage A, Oniki, and virtually anybody else wouldn't really be able to stand toe-to-toe with Minato, as only Naruto could do that one day. So please, I know Minato is controversial, but saying he's more of a top tier, Hokage area, or a war arc tier, rather than saying he's just some rival to the Akatsuki is much more consistent. Even arguably the 2nd strongest Akatsuki member, watch Itachi vs. Pain, was actually only ever acknowledged by Obito as an opponent in the novels, with their connection being that Obito is sort of skeptical, sort of scared of Itachi, maybe his IQ, and that's it. But here, we just have Minato absolutely throttling Obito, and yes, I know it's become a trend to say that Obito is extremely relative to Minato, or that Obito could have won this bout, and that's just not the case. The only reason Obito ever did this good was specifically due to how Minato was extremely wary of Kamui. Picture this, right? Minato loses. Then what happens? What happens to the village? it literally gets destroyed. A century of military might and success, success for these children, everything, it just crumbles to the ground. Minato cannot allow that. So him being cautious and only ever going for Obito is when he understood how Kamui worked after several different strikes to test it, knowing that he needed now a mutual strike, and then just blitzed and one-shot him while simultaneously placing a separation seal on him, making it so Obito couldn't control Kurama anymore. The chapter synopsis statement here actually straight up says that Minato won the Battle of Speed. Prior to this, if you really pay attention, you'll notice not only how Minato fights in character, but how he was actually outpacing Obito at nearly every turn. For example, right, in their first interaction where Obito planned to kill this baby Naruto and hopefully beat a fatigued Minato who had been holding Kurama for hours and hours on end, we can actually see that upon Obito grabbing Naruto, he tosses him in the air, and Minato obviously blitzes his combat speed, reacting directly to Obito trying to stab Naruto, yet Obito knew this. He knew Minato is faster than him and even planned on it, hence to why he actually placed bombs on Naruto's shirt. This is just going to show the ridiculous speed of Minato's body flicker. It's also just completely blitzing the full Kurama while he was swinging down his paw to literally murder Kushina. Is just another one of those really impressive feats. And Minato actually blitzing the full thing is just ridiculous when you think about KCM2, right? And the common counter to this is always, well, the Bijou are weaker than Jinchuriki, so this is way weaker than KCM2. And while this idea isn't entirely wrong, we know that the reason as to why Jinchuriki are stronger is because they have a greater utilization and level of intelligence surrounding combat and how they can actually utilize this chakra. And Bijou alone don't really have this, except Kurama, who has been a living sentient being since nearly the age of Zetsu and is even compared to Kakashi in intellect with all that experience. So this is probably questionable in Kurama's case, and this is further solidified by not only Kakashi mistaking KCM2 Naruto for Minato, but also the entire narrative of how Naruto needs to master the Nine Tails, which to master is to attain KCM2 to beat Obito, the masked man, a threat that just I thought that Sage Mode Naruto wouldn't even be able to keep up with whether he could beat up the Six Paths of Pain or not, because Obito is on a different level, a level that would need complete mastery over the Nine Tails, a level that Minato slammed. So saying that Minato is closer to KCM2 is actually very consistent. I mean, I can go on and on for more of this scaling, but let's just go straight into our first match, being Hashirama's position against EMS Madara. Now, if it wasn't clear when you first clicked on the video, Madara Uchiha is by far the strongest enemy on this list. Kinkaku and Ginkaku are not smacking that boy up. Now, during Minato's fight with Obito, he was obviously very wary, but was still confident in taking down who he believed to be Madara in the flesh. So, could Minato actually ever beat the real Madara if he was in Hashirama's place? And to be honest, probably not. Madara Uchiha is kind of pushing a separate caliber of shinobi, and while Minato could have the possibility of outspeeding base Madara or base Hashirama, some forms of EMS or Sage is probably just not going to happen. During the war arc, when 8 Gates Guy was pressuring Madara and pressured him so much, Madara actually notes how Guy is the first to give him this feeling of pressure since Hashirama. This straight up placing Hashirama above characters like KCM2 Naruto, EMS Sasuke, and Tobirama, which while Minato can blitz Hashirama to the battlefield, with him actually just being the last to the battlefield according to the anime, with this just also adding a line of consistency for Minato being comparable to KCM2, it still doesn't really do anything for him against Madara, as while he may hold a speed edge potentially, Madara is still able to actually keep up with Sage Hashirama and Taijutsu, enough for them to battle all the way till base for a substantial amount of time, which while Madara wasn't a match for Sage Hashirama's wood style being his strong suit, saying that he could keep up with Hashirama following the Bijou Bomb clash and Buddha clash probably isn't disingenuous. You could also assert how Madara's 4th databook file does mention the difference between them was paper thin and that they were nearly equal in strength. This is very important, as this means that since we know Hashirama was certainly superior in his Sage Mode wood style Buddha versus the Susanoo Kurama clash, this means that in terms of ninjutsu, Hashirama was superior, just objectively. However, this means that what Madara was able to accomplish in the taijutsu battle turned the tides enough to where they could actually be considered equals. This is also just supported by looking at their final clashes, as Madara is clearly shown with less damage or maybe equal damage taken, yet Madara doesn't possess a healing factor like Hashirama does, potentially implying that Madara did have the edge in this hand-to-hand scuffle, likely aided by the mastery of his Sharingan. And also, for that databook statement, it's literally pointing at their clash in taijutsu. Hashirama is also an extremely honorable shinobi, and he also had to resort to stabbing Madara in the back to win, sort of resulting in a dirty move. Now, Madara Susanoo alone is capable of tanking Bijou Bombs to the arm, with Hashirama using it like a Rasengan, and yet the Susanoo didn't crack. This being a testament to the Susanoo and Madara's in specific, since this version in particular isn't even the perfect Susanoo, not even the full power Madara Susanoo, but a suppressed version of the Susanoo. The complete Susanoo that MS, Sasuke, and Itachi used, but the only difference is Sasuke's Susanoo was being broken by Danzo's like wind style, and Madara's is tanking Bijou Bombs. With the Susanoo then being added to Kurama, Minato just has a world of trouble to deal with, and while Minato could likely outmaneuver Kurama, he does much later to Kurama, with him being able to body flicker away and go around him and react to things, with like the Flying Thunder God Guiding Thunder to stop things like the Bijou Bomb from destroying the village. And while this jutsu is extremely fatiguing due to it literally cracking space and time, Minato won't have to use that here, as he can just let them go off and teleport away with his normal Flying Thunder God, which is just much more of an advantage than what he had in his bout with Obito. However, actually dealing with the Susanoo, as in taking it off of Madara, is going to be very difficult. Minato's Sealing Ninjutsu in his literally just like his only trump card. Like, I'm gonna be honest, it's his only trump card here, and it's sort of unprovable if he could actually teleport the Susanoo off Madara. And if it does come down to hand-to-hand combat, Minato's AP isn't really that good, but his cutting strength and striking power is around the 5 Kage. If you really do subscribe to him like scaling above Hiruzen via having that unrivaled strength, as we talked about, but we can see him like cut the 8 Tails like partial transformation tentacle, which I don't know why people bring up this feat. It's really not that good or anything to note, as even like A as a Jonin, who Minato is greater than, could also just do this pretty casually as well, with these tentacles practically scaling nowhere, if I'm being honest. I do think if you really hold Minato in a high regard in scaling, which I kind of do, or at least above the KCM2 or marginally faster than Edo Hashirama, then it's very likely that he would be able to use the Reaper Death Seal to save the village. But this is assuming he could do this or hold such an overwhelming advantage to be able to seal, to seal Madara himself. However, I mean, we are made aware that the 4th Hokage's Sealing Ninjutsu is nothing to scoff at. The most crucial one here obviously being his Separation Contract, which he used to cut Obito's Genjutsu control over Kurama, which he could do the same here for Madara. And there are just many more, such as the 8 Tetragram Seal that can literally hold the KCM1 cloak on, as you can see with Kushina also implying that Minato doesn't have to die to seal the 9 Tails, and questions him about the usage of the Reaper Death Seal. So if you subscribe to Minato's speed, maybe you think he actually scales to 8 Tails from him intercepting him mid-air, then this could be a case of him using his Flying Thunder God to then teleport and seal him, if he could seal him. But my only problem with this 8-gate guy feat is not actually the feat himself, but the manner at which Minato would have to do this. There's just like, it's hard to make this assertion, because it's kind of like you have to plug the controller in his ass, like sort of scenario. But like, I guess B does imply that Minato is the first to back quite a smash after seeing KCM1 Naruto, implying that Minato is very direct off start in battle. But since he didn't start, this battle with Obito and who he believed to be Madara that way, it probably won't happen here. So while I love Minato and subscribe to him being underrated almost and very strong, he probably can't beat EMS Madara straight up, or at least the amount of times that Madara could beat him. Madara likely just has the 9 Tails severed from him and then goes straight to Susanoo, and the Susanoo, who could tank 9 Tails Bijou Bombs without a scratch, then just hits Minato away or out-stamina him, as he did fight for days on end. And yes, Minato's stamina is extremely underrated, which I'll talk about later. It's not like on Madara's level, so Madara probably wins like 6 out of 7 times. And also, just a note, I always say that Tobirama loses to Madara, but that doesn't mean I think Minato wins. Okay, chill. Now, next up, we have Tweedledee and Tweedledum, Kinkaku and Ginkaku. Okay, only kidding, but let's be real. Kinkaku and Ginkaku are the weirdest characters in this list, like by far. While them obviously killing Tobirama, the 2nd Hokage, isn't really portrayed as an anti-feat, but rather maybe Tobirama just isn't as crazy as some people think he is. Here, I'll just say this. Minato literally just wins. I have a full video on this, and it will be in the description as well, but I'll still go over all my relevant points here. And my stance is that both fight Kurama, one seals it away, and the others were eaten. Now, one really weird thing about Kinkaku and Ginkaku getting eaten is firstly that they're actually implied to be golden lights among the cloud, 2 honorable shinobi, as Kuma once tried to capture Kurama, and they're actually in combative stances whilst being eaten. So either Kurama just perception blitzed them entirely, or they meant to jump at his mouth and they couldn't hurt it from the outside potentially, and they just dove inside. And we know the reason as to why they never got poisoned from eating his innards is actually that they had Hagoromo's DNA, which is bonded to Kurama's. And if you're unaware of of this argument of mine, then please go check out the These Three Are Not As Strong As You Think, which is about Indra, Ashura, and Hagoromo, which will explain this and chakra as a whole very in depth. Now, what makes this so weird to me is that Kurama was sealed in Mito in the final valley battle, okay, and he's completely sealed up till Kushina moved to Konoha, and a few years following until Mito died, which we did see Kumo try to take her, and it failed. This means that back in the day, Kurama either escaped and Kumo tried to take advantage, Tobirama stopped it, so Tobirama fans, there you go, and then a few years later, they formed an alliance at the Peace Summit, or Kinkaku and Ginkaku actually fought Kurama before the Final Valley when he was just roaming, and since Kinkaku died at the age of 44, they would have been much, much younger, and Kinkaku and Ginkaku were likely just not in their prime yet physically, excluding how they would, later get these Six Tails cloaks, obviously making them definitely stronger. So trying to downplay Kinkaku and Ginkaku due to their loss with Kurama is probably a bit disingenuous, just in my opinion. I mean, Minato's speed advantage is still pretty substantial considering he was able to blitz around and dodge the full Kurama, which just one half of Kurama is greater than even the 6 or 8 Tails version of Naruto. The Jinchuriki host making it also just greater than Kinkaku and Ginkaku. So yes, Minato could by all means blitz around them, and since this time around we are just having him face Kinkaku and Ginkaku instead of the no-name Kinkaku unit that killed Tobirama, or maybe you say that they're there along with 20 high-level ninja, then it's still kind of irrelevant regardless, just because of how Minato actually fights in his style, and it's much more adept with him fighting more people at once due to his mastery of the FTG, as shown in him decimating 50 shinobi off screen who were literally deployed in war. And since there isn't any statement confirming this unit's power outside of highly skilled, Minato is probably just working these shinobi, to be honest. One thing nobody really brings up for Minato is while he is a Jonin and was able to actually replicate the exact same sensory feat as Tobirama, bar for bar. In Kakashi Gaiden, you can see Minato places 2 fingers on the ground to instantly locate the enemy shinobi, alongside him also sensing Naruto's, chakra across the country, similar to how Tobirama did in the war. So yes, everyone brings up sensory for Tobirama, but never for Minato, when they literally have the exact same feats. It is kind of odd, their feats are so similar, but they'll be